When we started out, we were thinking, okay, we just want adoption. And I still think that's the right place to start when you're building any kind of new product. The key is to just get people using it. But very quickly, we wanted to move to something that was more outcome based.
Welcome back to First Pass. Today, we're joined by Neil, an engineering leader at Sierra. Sierra is one of the leading AI application companies focused on customer experience. And today, we're going to be talking about how Sierra is using AI internally to improve their own productivity. Neil, who's leading a lot of those efforts, is joining us. Thanks for being on, Neil.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, Neil, a lot of companies are trying to use AI to be more productive and have had mixed results. You set out on these efforts a few months ago and had, mixed results initially yourself, focused on, using role-specific agents to automate individual roles yourselves. Curious if you could walk us through that and some of the challenges you had starting out.
Yeah, so I think that it's really natural to think, okay, we'll have like an agent for data science and a coding agent and a marketing agent, and they'll collaborate, and sort of this metaphor to how humans work is very intuitive. The problem is that one, discovery gets difficult, so people start to get confused about which agent to use for what as the agents proliferate, and which capabilities different agents have starts to drift, and none of them are as good as if you focus on making one really great agent where every improvement you make goes to all of them. And so we would see things like people would say, wait, I thought this agent could make charts. I think it's broken. It can't make charts anymore. And someone in Slack be like, no, it's this other agent that makes charts. And really you're sort of pushing the burden on users to manage that. Whereas, it's better just give them one front door and put the burden of figuring out, what context and tools are going to be needed for whatever they're doing. Put that on the platform, and I think you end up as well breaking down a lot of, departmental barriers that really exist to organize people, but workflows tend to transcend those, and so having an agent that can just keep going as you maybe started looking at a customer and you end up wanting to do some coding, and then you need to communicate something, and that can all just happen in one long running agent.
Yeah, well, tell us about Pinecone and the architecture that you ultimately settled on.
Yeah, so Pinecone is a, sort of, there's a 3-tier stack. At the bottom is agency, which is our sort of generic cloud agent running platform. We use it for our in-product agents as well as for Pinecone. And that's built on Kubernetes, and every agent has its own pod in the cloud that we can then spin up whatever services the agent needs to get its work done. Giving agents access to things, but they never actually see any credentials, or being able to hibernate agents and then wake them up again to save on resources, or keeping warm pools of agents that take a long time to boot up ready so that for users they start up quickly. The next piece is MCP Gateway. So this is sort of a single choke point for all agent access to data and tools. And that actually works with not just Pinecone, but also with ChatGPT and Claude Code and any other agent. It just surfaces as another MCP server. And that we built because we felt the need for our customers' security and privacy to be able to see all the data that was coming in and out of any agent session. It also allowed us to build around current shortcomings in the MCP ecosystem. So lots of services don't have MCP servers yet, or if they have them, they're kind of incomplete. And so we can kind of wrap REST APIs and other things to get a comprehensive MCP set of tools that touch everything in the company. The other really critical thing that it does is it delegates authentication. So when you are using an agent and it connects to any of those MCP tools, you have the permissions that you have in that system. So if you're accessing Salesforce or Slack or whatever it is, the agent sees exactly what you see. It sees your DMs and public channels, of course, but it can't see other people's DMs. And in that way, from a permissions and access control standpoint, we're kind of piggybacking on what already exists. And then finally, you have Pinecone, which is our own agent interface, and it is it presents for different departments in the company. Your typical Codex, Claude Code type of interface, but you can work not only with pull requests, but also with all different types of artifacts that other departments have to work with, like contracts or opportunities in Salesforce and that kind of thing.
Cool. Well, Neil, I love how you broke down the different layers of kind of your stack and how you're building. Yeah, I think the parallel to the classic SaaS stack was a database, usually a transactional database with a UI on top. And many have been saying, I think Satya said it first, many sense, that the systems of record, right, the classic SaaS app stack is, maybe shrinking in relevance as we move to an agent world. And the UI is now going to be dominated by agents. And the value that remains of the system of record is just a dumb database, a dumb CRUD database. Mm-hmm. How do you see it? Like, how do you see the role of a system of record, maybe more classic system of record evolving in a world of agents?
Yeah, so I see that future as well. Like, there's certainly times where we're looking at tools and going, wow, this is a really expensive CRUD backend for our agent to be paying for this SaaS app. At the same time, right now, there's a lot that those apps are still critical for. So first of all, they give you a UI that's where people do want to just interact manually and see things. They have like a mature UI for that. Really importantly, they manage all the permissions and access controls, and as I said, we're sort of piggybacking on those right now. They also have lots of workflows sort of built into the business logic of those apps. And when you think about the MCP tools that you're connecting, using to connect to those, they're often at that level, sort of process transaction, not, write, read to some SQL database. So I still think there's a lot of value there for now, and replacing all of that would be a huge undertaking, which we, very intentionally didn't want to take on at the moment. But whether in the future there's some more unified backend for agents and we get into more generative UI, which I'm just stunned. We have a part of Pinecone called campsites where you can just make little React apps and share them, and like it's crazy what people are building. But I think we're, from just kind of like a first principles standpoint, what you want to be really careful of is creating a silo, like creating a split brain where, okay, now some of your CRM information or other information lives in your agent backend, and some of it lives in this SaaS product, and some of your employees are working on this and some of your employees are working on that. I mean, that's a much more costly thing to do, and by keeping the system this way, we allow people to work in a hybrid mode, and not everybody has to migrate at once, and we don't have to build out that large mature product space, in a day kind of thing.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I think one of the other trends I like looking at is business models, and in many ways, the software world has gone from kind of term licenses and maintenance to SaaS contracts to consumption contracts to now a version of that, which is more kind of not a consumption, is maybe more an input, but an output, an outcome-based pricing. How did you think about measuring outcomes? Ultimately so that you could align the value you deliver to customers to prices you charge, but also just to measure, is what you're doing working? How do you think about measuring outcomes, and how did it impact your journey in AI?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's something that Sierra has pioneered, and it's certainly like in the DNA of the company. And so affected how we thought about internal tools is just the way it does our product. Um, so when we started out, we were thinking, okay, we just want adoption. Like, and I still think that's the right place to start when you're building any kind of new product. The key is to just get people using it. And there we were just looking at, DAUs and tokens to get like a sense of engagement. But very quickly, we wanted to move to something that was more outcome based. For that, I think, some departments are easier to measure the outcomes than others, but I don't think there's a new version of doing that. So, we know in software engineering, like lines of code is not a good measure, but I think roughly pull requests per head per week gives you some sense of velocity. And then just qualitatively, like surveying the team also provides a lot of signal. And then in other departments, whether it's marketing with pipeline or sales with, conversion and ARR growth, those measures are still good. And I think they're still the right measures for outcomes. The other thing that we did that I think helped us was the first thing we did was make sure that everyone had access to all the state-of-the-art tools across Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and Cursor. And we felt really strongly like we didn't want to force people into Pinecone. We wanted to win them over and on the merits. So that's helped us in a number of ways to sort of deeply understand what the sort of buy vendor path could provide and give us a real bar that we had to get over as a team in terms of the quality of our product to deliver on what, I think the whole point of something like this is we have to deliver Sierra leverage over and above what we could get off the shelf. And otherwise there's no point in doing it yourself. So that I think was the right way to create the right environment for us to kind of compete against those tools.
Yeah. Well, Neil, what advice do you have for companies that are trying to go on this similar journey as yours and try to become more AI built?
Yeah, I think it's been key to have a team in our engineering team that owns the process, and we work with all the ops teams and other departments and legal and but centralizing the effort and having it staffed with people that have access to sort of full stack of the company's technology and can build when that's needed is key. And then I would start with a data science agent. That's what we started with, not on purpose. We started as a team with we were working on a coding agent, and someone else had a data science agent that like took off and had crazy traction. And so we were like, okay, join us, like acqui-hire, and internally, and that's a good place to start on a number of levels. I think it's kind of safer because it tends to be read only, and you can drop it into Slack as an agent and just have it start answering questions for people. And the more you connect it to more of your systems of record, logs, and your data warehouse and GitHub and PagerDuty and then go from there beyond like your engineering things, it just naturally becomes this kind of oracle for everything at the company. And pretty soon, you feel like, do people even need like onboarding buddies? Or, you can just ask it anything and it's going to know more than any one individual at the company does. And then you're kind of off to the races. And that's pretty quick to set up, just make sure you're using a frontier model and connected all those data sources.
That's awesome. What an incredible journey. And thanks for being on, Neil.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.